Shalom. Been a while since I did a video. Just been watching, observing, considering the events transpiring and taking place. It wasn't until I read a news article today that I really kind of felt like making a new video, because it just seems that the agenda is playing out more and more, and is going into new phases. And considering that this particular phase is hitting kind of close to home for me, and I felt the need that because of that, it's time to talk about what's going on in mass. It's a lot of different things, so I'll try to cover everything. First off, mainly the reason that prompted me to make this video is that it appears we have entered the stage in this pandemic situation where local governments are starting to take it upon themselves to solicit the public for blood samples. This solicitation would not be for the public to come into a clinic to give blood samples to test for the virus, but in fact, this solicitation involves city officials coming to individuals' homes to acquire such blood samples. These blood samples are going to be used to find antibodies for the virus, in which case they can determine whether or not you have been infected with this virus. The city in question is Houston, Texas. And they are getting ready to roll out a program for what they say random testing of 420 homes, all of which are randomly selected. And this will be I'm guessing this is kind of a pilot program, if you will, baby steps. And like I said, these people would be going to certain people's homes, asking them to take a survey and asking them for a blood sample so that they might test for antibodies of the virus. Now, you might think that aside from giving blood, this is a pretty benign type thing. But in fact, what it truly shows is the absolute hell-bent desire to make a mountain out of a molehill. They want to keep this virus as the greatest threat to humanity in people's minds, even at the same time, while actual, factual, scientific data is released to the contrary. See, what we're seeing now is cognitive dissonance having reached a level beyond anything before. We literally have both sides of this argument presenting scientific data. We have both sides saying that the other side is not following the data at hand. Only to turn around and to prove themselves completely hypocritical. We're seeing this from both sides. This is why I truly follow the piece of scripture, Proverbs 4, verse 27. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 27. That neither the left or the right are good in this world. It is all evil. The only true good is if you can stay away from one of those two extremes. If you can stay away from both of them, then you can stay. That's the good area. But if you fall to either side, to the left or to the right, you fall into wickedness. And we're seeing it here. We have the side that has been continuously pushing how dire the situation is with this virus, and how people constantly telling people that we should listen to the science, we should listen to the numbers. And then when the numbers are shown, they turn around and tell us that those numbers don't mean what we think they mean. I am referring to now the CDC releasing the actual numbers in regards to the virus and fatalities. Out of the 150 at the time, or 160,000 deaths. How the CDC itself, the CDC which represents the science, the CDC that represents the numbers, the CDC that represents everything that we're constantly told by the media, by the politicians, that we should listen to. It releasing that only 6% of that 150, 160,000 can be truly termed as dying of the virus, as a result of the virus. Only 6% out of that 160,000 people. Whatever that mathematically comes out to, I don't know. But it's a far smaller number than what we're led to believe. That means that there's another 94% that died who just happened to have COVID, who just happened to have the virus at the time of their deaths. Now, it can be debated. Was the virus a major contributing factor to that 94%? Maybe, maybe not. Chances are it's variable. Logic dictates it wouldn't be 100% of them. But at the end of the day, even if you gave the nod to say the majority of that remaining 94% died because of the virus introducing major complications into their health, still, That would mean that the overall number of people who did die as a result of the virus would be a good deal lower than 160,000. But to go a bit further, logic dictates, according to the numbers that we see in the chart that I have on the screen here, and the type of deaths and morbidities that are included into these deaths, comorbidities that include the likes of which are intentional and unintentional injury, poisoning, and other adverse events. All other conditions and causes, residual. So, according to the CDC, they have included deaths in the virus death count with comorbidities that one can only consider as either an intentional or an unintentional injury, a poisoning, and other adverse events. So from this, we can conclude that even overdoses, even someone ingesting a poison, either intentionally or unintentionally. From this, we can conclude that even suicide has been added to the grand death total. So if someone committed suicide and they had their blood tested for the heck of it, I don't know why, but for some reason somebody decided to test the blood of the person that killed himself through suicide, and they found out that this person just so happened to have the virus. That death, that intentional injury, was added to the grand total of the deaths caused by the virus. This is on the CDC website. Now, the news media has been playing damage control. They have been trying to tell people that what they've seen is not what they've seen. They have been engaging in the same behavior that they have been accusing the public of engaging in. How often do we hear them say that the people who are not wearing their masks don't believe in science? That the people who are not wearing their masks do not accept the numbers? And here we have those same people showing that they don't believe in the science. Here we have that same media showing that they don't accept the numbers. Here we have that same propaganda machine telling us that what we are seeing is not what we're seeing. This is a damnable game. we're in now. I guess it always has been, but it is truly exposing its raw, naked ass to the world now. And just like any raw, naked ass, it stinks to high hell. And we are forced to smell every last bit of this thing. We are forced to endure it. Its funk. Its stank. Its blatant lies, deceptions, and hypocrisies. And speaking of funk that comes from an ass, it would seem now that not even your bodily waste is safe from these things and their ambitions to convince you that what you are experiencing is the worst thing to ever happen to the human species. They are now testing wastewater for the presence of the virus. That's right. They are rummaging through people's shit and piss to find out how many people are infected with the virus in a specific area. See, this is all being done to ensure, like I said, this stays on everyone's radar. Because if you refuse to be tested, how can they balloon the numbers? How can they blow up the statistics? If you refuse to go in and let them test you, this whole thing falls apart. So they have to keep it going somehow. So if they can't, if you're not willingly going to go to them to test you, they're just going to test your shit once it leaves your home. Once it leaves your body, goes down that toilet, goes into that septic system, and makes its way to the sewage plants. They're going to test that. That's just how determined they are to keep this whole thing afloat. I guess if anything, you can say that they're persistent. If anything. And I imagine rummaging through people's feces and bodily waste, that might be one of the perks in their minds. These are not the kind of people that you would consider sane, that are behind all this. So, they might be into a little bit of that, scat play and everything. So, one thing people should consider with what's going on, like these riots and stuff like that, we should consider what we don't see. When things are being destroyed by a supposed irate populace, we should always consider what it is that somehow isn't destroyed. The thing that you would think the irate populace would tear apart But for some reason, despite all the widespread chaos and destruction, for some reason, people seem to leave that alone. You know, it's strange how in a country like, in places like the UK, some people saw fit, some dastardly conspiracy theorists saw fit to burn down 70 to 80 next generation cell towers. Now, obviously somebody that does that is mad about something. But you would think that if they're so mad, wouldn't they take their rage out on their government? Maybe attack police stations like we see here in America? You know, I mean, they don't have the unintentional or intentional, unjustified police shootings and killings that we see here in this country. But so what is it that makes them so mad that why would they take their rage out on a next generation cell tower? And more importantly, why have the people here in America, despite their volcanic eruption of rage, have seemed to not harm a single one of these type of cell towers? I mean, surely the people who participate in these riots and protests are the kind of people who would most likely be conspiracy theorists. You know, hell, they believe that there's a conspiracy in the police departments to kill unarmed black men. Why would their conspiracy theories just stop there? Many of them ascribe to the conspiracy theory that the government is out to kill black folk and do bad things to black folk. Well, one of the conspiracy theories surrounding these next generation cell phone towers just so happens to be one where the tower can be turned into kind of a death ray or something. In fact, the technology behind these next generation cell phone towers has already been used in military applications in what is termed a heat ray. Yes, this same technology, when used in military applications, they call it a heat ray because it makes you feel hot, real hot, you know. So I would think that a conspiracy theorist who thinks that the government is trying to kill black people would link a technology that is considered a heat ray in military circles. I would think that maybe those type of towers would be on their hit list, but somehow, some way, they have survived. Not a single report that I know of has one of these next generation cell phone towers been a target of attack in America. So that gets back to my point that when you're witnessing chaos and destruction by irate mobs, always pay heed to what is left standing, what is ignored. That's how you can know whether or not you're being played. In other news, I got to talk about this one. It was a white 17-year-old that shot 3 people, killed 2, severely injured another. This is all over the news. Everybody knows about this. Kyle, Rittenhouse dude. But not too many people know the character of the individuals that he shot. And I find that kind of funny, considering that anytime a black person is harmed or gunned down by the police, and we come to the conclusion that it was all done unjustly, there's always a concerted effort to dive into the background and history of that individual. Every parking ticket, every speeding ticket, every stint in jail is known. Yet, when it comes to these 3 men, these 3 white men that were shot by this white boy, for some reason, only if you dig very deeply can you find out what kind of people these people were. Can you find out what their records were? And as it turns out, these individuals were all felons. They had prior criminal history, one of which even was a pedophile. Now, these are not, or should not be considered, shimmering examples of civilization. Yet, I find it odd that even black people, certain YouTube personalities, would rather ignore the facts about these white men. They rather ignore the facts about their criminal history. They rather ignore the circumstances that brought these white men into conflict with Kyle. And they jump right onto the bandwagon of the media narrative of this 17-year-old being a murderer and completely guilty of a heinous crime in this situation. So basically, we have black people, we have Israelites that I would assume have not accepted and acknowledged their heritage, hence the reason why they are allowing themselves to be played like this. This is something that we have to be highly aware of. Like the saying goes, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. We have plenty Israelites out here who are indeed Israelites by blood, but they are not Israelites by mind. They're still playing whatever silly ass games they've been caught up in, marching to whatever silly drum beat they've been marching to. And so we see them literally defending these three criminal white men just for the sake of towing the mainstream media line that this Kyle Rittenhouse is a dangerous criminal and should be persecuted and prosecuted. It is a very sad display. And I find it strange that in my life, I am reading parts of scripture where the Most High is expressing his grievances about his people. And one of the ones that he goes over numerous times is how we weren't fair judges. We were not judging people impartially and fairly. And here I see the same thing again. That lack of impartiality, that lack of fairness. Just wanting to bury someone because of their skin color. Not because of whether or not the crime they committed, or if they committed a crime at all, whether or not it warrants them being buried. Just wanting to bury them. Going by nothing but emotion. Here it is happening. And it is a sad display. To defend, to call this kid a murderer is to defend these three white criminals, one of which is a pedophile. That's basically what you're doing. You don't like it? Well, maybe you're not cut out for this whole Israelite thing. Because that's what it entails. You have to be a fair judge, regardless of your relation to someone, regardless of your history or past with somebody. You have to call it as it is. That's what it takes. And from what I'm seeing, quite a few of us just don't have it. And it is a sad display. Very sad. So, going back to the testing, and what is all this leading to? Why are they randomly selecting homes now to come and get some blood from you? Why are they testing our bodily waste now? Why are they doing all this extreme stuff just to find out whether or not you had the virus? When we see from the CDC numbers that there is really no other way you can come to, other conclusion you can come to, that this virus is nowhere near as deadly as it's being claimed to be. That's what those CDC numbers prove, no matter how this is spun. Those CDC numbers prove that this virus is nowhere near as deadly as they claim it to be. I know the argument could be, well, it proves that if you have a comorbidity, you get this virus, the virus is going to kill you. No, it doesn't prove that. Because there have been many people with such morbidities, like overweight, diabetes, heart disease, advanced age, that survived the virus. So that is not what these numbers prove. All these numbers prove is that if you have the misfortune to die with this virus, regardless of what your cause of death is, if they see that if they test you positive for the virus, if they test your corpse positive for the virus, they're going to throw that death into the grand total for the virus. That's what this that's what this CDC data shows. That's what it proves. If you fall off a building, break your neck on impact, and they test your lifeless body, and it comes back positive for the virus, that will be put into the grand total. That's what this test proves. That's what this data on the CDC website proves. So, considering all these things, my belief is that it's all meant to create the hysteria that they feel is necessary to push through the mandates that they want to push through. That's basically what this is all about. It's right there in front of our face. Such a heavy-handed response for something that is proven to not be anywhere near as deadly as other ailments. I don't see them throwing unintentional injuries or intentional injuries into the grand total statistical deaths for other diseases. Do they do that for the flu? If I was to OD on some type of drug and I had the flu, would that be marked as a death from the flu on the death certificate? I mean, I seriously don't know. I haven't taken the time out to look this up. But maybe somebody should. Are we seeing only with this particular disease a certain type of looseness when it comes to deaths supposedly caused by it? A certain type of liberal method when it comes to deaths caused by it. I think that's something that people should research in light of this CDC information. Just compile and compare the data and see if they do the same thing with everything else. If not, well, it's not like we need any more proof. But I guess in a situation like this, Every little bit helps. Shalom.